Millionaire husband leaves 8 months pregnant wife at a remote gas station and drives to resort. Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel. Today's story is a dramatic one. Asterisk. Millionaire husband leaves 8 months pregnant wife at a remote gas station and drives to resort. Asterisk. What happens next will leave you speechless. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into this extraordinary tale that starts with a shocking decision at a remote gas station, one that will forever change the lives of the couple involved. It all began on a cold, lonely night in the middle of nowhere. The headlights of the car cut through the darkness as Robert, a successful and wealthy businessman, pulled up to the dimly lit gas station. His wife, Clara, sat quietly beside him, 8 months pregnant, her eyes filled with questions, but she remained silent. Robert didn't look at her as he turned off the engine. There was no conversation, no warning. He stepped out of the car and went around to her side. "I'll be back in a bit," he said curtly, opening her door for her. Clara didn't respond, too tired and confused to say anything. He reached for her hand and helped her out, but instead of guiding her to the convenience store as she expected, he led her to the side of the gas station. There, with no warning, he paused, his eyes locked with hers, before he said the words that would haunt her forever. "I need to go." "You stay here," he said flatly. Clara's heart dropped. "What? Robert, no. Please, you can't just leave me here, not like this." Her voice trembled with disbelief. But Robert didn't seem to hear her. He only gave her a cold, distant look before turning on his heel and walking away. "I'll be back soon," he muttered, but the words were as hollow as his expression. Clara stood frozen, her feet sinking slightly into the wet pavement. It felt like the world had tilted off its axis, and she was the only one left standing in the chaos. The sounds of the night filled her ears, crickets chirping in the distance, the hum of the gas station lights buzzing overhead. She felt so alone. And for a brief moment, Clara thought she might be imagining it, but the chill that ran through her body wasn't from the cold wind. It was from something deeper, something that didn't make sense. Why was Robert acting like this? Why was he leaving her in such a vulnerable state, so far from home? Was this his way of punishing her, or was it something else entirely? The minutes passed like hours, and still, there was no sign of Robert returning. Clara pulled her coat tighter around her body, hoping to shield herself from the biting air. Her mind raced as she tried to make sense of the situation, but there were no answers, just a growing sense of dread that something wasn't right. And as time dragged on, she realized something even more horrifying. Robert had disappeared. She had been left behind, alone at the gas station, with no idea where he had gone or when he would return. Her stomach turned at the thought of being abandoned, but she pushed it aside. She had to stay strong for the baby. But the questions kept coming. Why did he leave? Why hadn't he given her any explanation? She could feel the fear rising in her chest as her pregnancy weighed heavily on her. But there was also something else, something that made her even more determined. This wasn't just about being abandoned by her husband. This was about reclaiming her life, understanding the truth, and finding out exactly why Robert had done this to her. Clara wasn't going to wait passively for answers. She was going to find out the truth, no matter what it took. As Clara stood there in the cold, the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. Her husband, Robert, had left her alone at a gas station, without so much as a word of explanation. She hugged her coat tighter around her body, trying to shield herself from the biting wind, but it felt like nothing could protect her from the growing sense of abandonment that filled her chest. She glanced around, the desolate landscape stretching in every direction, the dim lights of the gas station flickering above her. It was late, the streets were empty, and the only sounds were the rustling of leaves and the distant hum of traffic on the highway. The silence felt oppressive. Clara's mind raced, trying to make sense of everything. Why had Robert done this? They had been married for 5 years, and in all that time, he had never been anything but attentive, caring, and loving, at least. That's what she had thought. But now, it seemed as if the man she had known was gone. What had happened between them? Why had he left her, especially now when she was so vulnerable, so close to giving birth to their child? She felt a pang of fear, not just for herself, but for their unborn baby. Robert's actions had shaken her, and the fear of being alone in this moment was overwhelming. The baby kicked gently, reminding her that she wasn't truly alone. Clara took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. There was no point in standing there, waiting for Robert to return. She needed to take control of the situation. She couldn't let him dictate her next move, especially not when she was pregnant and stranded. She pulled out her phone, but the screen remained blank. No service. She cursed under her breath, feeling the weight of her isolation grow heavier. As she turned, preparing to walk toward the convenience store to ask for help, a car pulled into the station, its headlights briefly blinding her. Clara shielded her eyes, watching as the vehicle came to a stop. The driver's side door opened, and a man stepped out. He was tall, dressed in a thick winter coat, his face partially obscured by a scarf. Clara hesitated, but the man walked toward her, a purposeful stride in his step. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice surprisingly warm for the cold night. Clara nodded, though she felt far from it. "I'm fine," she replied, but the words felt hollow even to her. The man studied her for a moment, then glanced at the gas station behind her. "I can give you a ride to the nearest town if you need it. It's not safe to be out here alone." Clara felt a wave of hesitation. She had been taught never to trust strangers, especially at night, but something about this man's offer seemed genuine, and in that moment, she realized she had no other choice. She was stranded, alone, and terrified. "Thank you," she said, her voice trembling slightly. The man gave her a nod and motioned for her to follow him to the car. Clara glanced back at the gas station one last time, her heart heavy. What was happening to her life? Why had Robert left her here, with no explanation, no answers? She couldn't understand it, and the questions swirling in her mind were too much to bear. She had to know the truth. But for now, all she could do was get out of this lonely place, away from the memories of Robert's betrayal. As Clara settled into the passenger seat of the car, the man started the engine, and they drove off into the night, the gas station disappearing in the rearview mirror. Clara stared out of the window, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts. Who was Robert really? Why had he left her behind like this? Was there something she didn't know about him? She couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this story than she could see. And as the car sped down the dark road, Clara made a silent vow to herself. She would find out the truth. No matter what it took, she would uncover the reason behind Robert's actions and find a way to heal the broken pieces of her life. As Clara sat in the car, the night stretched out before her like an endless road, the headlights illuminating the empty road ahead. She glanced over at the man driving, trying to find some comfort in the unfamiliar silence between them. He seemed kind, but there was still a sense of unease hanging in the air. Who was he really? Why had he stopped to help her? She couldn't shake the feeling that her world had just turned upside down, and she was spiraling into an unknown place. The car hummed steadily on the road, and for the first time in hours, Clara let herself relax a little. She was away from the gas station, away from the place where her life had been shattered, but that didn't mean she felt any better. The questions about Robert, her husband, continued to plague her thoughts. Where was he? Why had he abandoned her at that gas station? Was this the end of their marriage, or was there something deeper going on that she didn't understand? She could feel the baby shifting inside her, a gentle reminder of the life that depended on her to stay strong, no matter what came next. The man in the driver's seat glanced over at her, sensing her unease. "I know this must be difficult for you," he said, his voice gentle. "But you're safe now. I'll make sure you get to where you need to go." Clara nodded but didn't speak. She was grateful for his help, but it didn't take away the ache in her heart. The pain of being left behind, of being treated like she didn't matter, was still fresh. The thought of Robert, the man she had trusted, walking away from her when she needed him most, made her feel as though the ground beneath her was slipping away. The car drove for what felt like hours, the city lights starting to fade into the background as they entered a quieter, darker stretch of road. Clara's mind was racing, trying to make sense of everything. She couldn't focus on the man beside her, couldn't focus on anything other than the deep ache inside her chest. She needed answers, and she needed them now. Finally, the car slowed down as they entered a small town. The streets were quieter here, the buildings old and worn. The man turned to her and gave her a soft smile. "We're almost there," he said. "There's a safe place where you can stay, at least for the night. You can rest and figure out your next steps." Clara felt a wave of relief wash over her. She hadn't realized how exhausted she was, how much the weight of everything had drained her. She just needed to rest, to clear her head. The man pulled into a small rustic inn. It was nothing fancy, but it felt like a safe haven in the middle of all the chaos. He stopped the car and turned to her. "I'll get you checked in," he said, "and then I'll leave you to get some rest." Clara hesitated for a moment, but then nodded. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I appreciate it." She stepped out of the car, the cool night air hitting her face. The man led her inside, where a warm light greeted them. The innkeeper, an older woman with kind eyes, checked Clara in and handed her a key to one of the rooms. "You're safe here," the woman said, smiling gently. Clara forced a smile in return, but the weight of her situation was still heavy on her heart. As she walked down the hallway to her room, she could feel the exhaustion in every step. She was grateful for the shelter, but her mind was far from at ease. The door clicked shut behind her, and she sank down onto the bed, her hands resting on her swollen belly. The room was small but comfortable. It had a soft bed, a simple wooden table, and a window that overlooked the quiet street outside. It felt like a world away from the gas station, a world away from Robert. But the silence was deafening. The silence of being alone in this moment, with so many unanswered questions. Clara closed her eyes for a moment, breathing in the quiet. She needed to rest, but sleep didn't come easily. She kept thinking about Robert, about the man she had married and loved. Where was he now? What was going on in his mind? She knew she needed to make sense of this, to find out the truth. But at that moment, she could only focus on the ache in her heart and the uncertainty that had settled in her soul. The night passed slowly, each hour dragging on as Clara lay awake, tossing and turning. She couldn't shake the feeling that everything was changing, and the question that lingered in her mind was no longer just about why Robert had left her. It was about what she was going to do next. Clara had always been strong, but now she needed to find a strength she hadn't known she had. She had to keep moving forward, for herself, and for the life she was about to bring into the world. And she would not stop until she found the answers she so desperately needed. Clara woke up to the soft light filtering through the curtains, the quiet of the room offering a sense of peace that she hadn't felt in what seemed like ages. Her mind had raced through the night, each thought about Robert twisting and turning, but somehow, the comfort of the bed had managed to offer her a brief escape from the chaos in her heart. She rubbed her swollen belly, feeling the gentle movement of the baby inside her, a reminder of the life she was carrying, a life she had to protect no matter what happened next. The warmth of the sunlight against her skin was a welcome contrast to the coldness she had felt last night when Robert had abandoned her. She pushed the thought of him aside, determined not to let him occupy her mind any longer. Today, she had to focus on herself and the answers she needed. She got out of bed slowly, stretching her stiff limbs as she stood, and made her way to the small bathroom. The cool water from the faucet splashed onto her face, shocking her into full wakefulness. She stared at her reflection in the mirror, barely recognizing the woman staring back at her. The exhaustion was written on her face, but there was something else there, too, something stronger. She had always been the kind of woman who faced challenges head-on, and this situation would be no different. She wasn't going to let Robert's actions define her or her future. She took a deep breath, wiping her face with a towel, and made her way back to the small, rustic room. The town outside the window was quiet, and the streets seemed to hold their breath, as if waiting for something to happen. Clara knew she couldn't stay here forever. She couldn't hide away from the questions that had been gnawing at her since the night before. She had to find out what Robert was hiding, and she had to do it on her own. Her hand hovered over her phone, still without service, but she couldn't shake the feeling that there was someone who might have answers. The man who had helped her last night, the one who had driven her here, had seemed kind and genuine, but she still didn't know anything about him. He had offered her shelter, but what else did he know? Why had he helped her in the first place? As Clara gathered her things, a knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. She froze for a moment, wondering if it was the man from last night, but she quickly dismissed the thought. Who else would be coming? She opened the door, and to her surprise, the man from last night was standing there, a warm smile on his face. "Good morning," he said, his voice soft. "I wanted to make sure you were all right." Clara blinked, trying to compose herself. "I'm fine," she replied, her voice still sounding a little shaky. "Thank you for everything." He nodded, stepping into the room without invitation. "I'm glad to hear that," he said, his eyes studying her carefully. "But I have to ask, are you planning to stay here for long? I think it's important that you figure out what you want to do next." Clara felt a pang in her chest, realizing that he was right. She couldn't hide away forever. She had to face the truth. no matter how difficult it might be. I'm not sure yet, she replied, keeping her tone even. But I'm not staying here. I need to know what happened with my husband. The man nodded, a knowing look crossing his face. I figured as much, he said. Listen, I don't know the whole story, but I think I can help. I know people in town who might have information about your husband. Clara's heart skipped a beat. What kind of information? She asked, her voice sharp with curiosity. He hesitated, glancing around the room before speaking. Let's just say I know some things that might explain why he left you like that. But it's not something I can just tell you right here. Clara's pulse quickened. This was the chance she had been waiting for. I'll do whatever it takes, she said, her voice firm. The man smiled softly, then nodded. I'll take you to someone who might have answers. But you have to be careful. There's more going on here than you realize. Clara's stomach tightened with both excitement and dread. Was this the truth she had been searching for? Was she finally going to understand why Robert had abandoned her? She had no idea what she was about to walk into, but she was ready. She had to know what Robert had been hiding, and she was willing to risk everything to find out. She gathered her things quickly, preparing to follow the man into the unknown. As they left the room and walked out into the quiet morning, Clara felt a sense of determination rise in her. She wasn't going to let this mystery control her any longer. She was going to take control of her life and find the answers she needed. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, Clara felt like she was walking towards something that would finally bring her peace. Clara followed the man through the quiet streets, her mind racing with questions. Where was he taking her? Who were these people he knew that might have information about Robert? As they walked, the weight of the situation pressed heavily on her chest. The sun was rising higher now, casting a soft light over the small town, but Clara felt no warmth. Her thoughts were consumed by her husband's betrayal and her need to find the truth. They reached a small, run-down building on the edge of town, its faded sign barely readable. The man stopped in front of it and turned to Clara. "This is the place," he said, his voice low. "But you need to understand something before we go in. The people here know things that might change how you see your husband. Are you ready for that?" Clara hesitated for a moment, her heart pounding in her chest. She wasn't sure if she was ready to face the truth, but she knew she had no choice. She nodded. "I need to know. I have to understand why he left me." The man gave her a small smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. "All right," he said, "follow my lead." They walked inside, the door creaking as they entered. The air inside was thick with the smell of old wood and dust. The room was dimly lit, with only a few scattered lamps flickering on the tables. Clara's eyes scanned the room, and she noticed several people sitting at the tables, talking in hushed voices. It was the kind of place where secrets were traded and whispered about. As they approached the back of the room, a woman looked up. Her eyes were sharp, her expression unreadable. "You brought her?" the woman asked, her voice cold. The man nodded. "She needs answers." The woman studied Clara for a moment, then gestured for them to sit. "All right," she said. "Let's hear what you need to know." Clara sat down, her stomach in knots. This was it. The moment she had been waiting for, the moment that could change everything. "I need to know why my husband left me," she said, her voice steady despite the fear she felt. "He left me at a gas station, pregnant and alone, and I don't understand why." The woman leaned back in her chair, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Robert isn't the man you think he is," she said, her voice almost a whisper. "There are things about him that go beyond just being a rich businessman." Clara felt a chill run down her spine. What was she talking about? Who was Robert really? "What do you mean?" Clara asked, her voice tight. The woman paused for a moment, as if considering how much to say. "Robert has been hiding things from you for a long time," she said finally. "He's involved in things that you wouldn't even believe, things that go far beyond just business." Clara's heart began to race. What was this woman saying? What kind of things had Robert been involved in? "What do you mean, things that go beyond business?" Clara asked again, her voice cracking with desperation. The woman leaned forward slightly, her gaze intense. "He's been working with people who have their own agendas, people who don't care about you or your baby. He's been making deals, shady deals, and it's been affecting everything: your marriage, your life, and even your future." Clara could hardly breathe. This was the man she had married, the man she had trusted. But now, everything she thought she knew about him was crumbling before her eyes. "Why didn't he tell me any of this?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Why did he leave me, pregnant and alone?" The woman's expression softened, just slightly. Robert didn't want you involved in any of this, she said. He thought he was protecting you, but in the process he pushed you away. He was caught in a web of lies, and he didn't know how to get out of it. He didn't want you to be a part of the mess he's in. Clara sat back in her chair, her mind spinning. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Her husband, the man she had loved and trusted, had been living a double life. And now, he had left her with nothing but questions and confusion. The woman's voice broke through her thoughts. "If you want to know the full story, you need to go to him," she said. "But you have to be careful. Robert isn't the same man you think he is. He's involved in things that could put both you and your baby in danger." Clara's breath caught in her throat. Danger? What kind of danger was she talking about? She stood up, her legs shaky. "Where is he?" she demanded, her voice urgent. "Tell me where he is." The woman hesitated, then gave Clara a small, knowing smile. "I can't tell you that," she said. "But if you truly want the truth, you'll find him. And when you do, you'll have to decide what to do with it." Clara's heart pounded in her chest as she walked out of the building, the weight of the woman's words heavy on her shoulders. Robert had been hiding a dark secret from her, and now everything had changed. She didn't know where to go or what to do, but she knew one thing for sure: she was going to find him, and she was going to get the answers she deserved. Clara walked out of the small building, her mind spinning with the new revelations she had just heard. Robert, her husband, the man she had loved and trusted, had been hiding things from her, things so dark and dangerous that he had left her without a word of explanation. Her heart felt heavy as she tried to process everything. How could she have been so blind? How had she missed the signs of his double life? The woman in the building had spoken with such certainty, and though Clara wanted to dismiss it all as a misunderstanding, something deep inside her told her that it was true. Robert had been involved in something much bigger than business, something that had put their lives in jeopardy. She couldn't ignore that. The cold air hit her face as she stepped into the empty street, the weight of the night pressing in on her. She needed answers. She needed to find Robert and confront him, but where could she even start? She didn't know where he was, and the idea of walking into whatever world he was now a part of filled her with dread. But it wasn't just about confronting him anymore. It was about protecting herself and her unborn child. Clara couldn't let herself be swept away by Robert's lies and secrets. She had to find the truth. She had to take control of the situation before it controlled her. The town was eerily quiet, the only sound the distant hum of cars on the highway. Clara's phone still had no service, and she had no idea who to turn to for help. She glanced around, trying to figure out her next step. Her thoughts were interrupted when a car pulled up beside her. It was the same man who had helped her the night before. He rolled down his window and looked at her with a concerned expression. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice gentle. Clara stopped for a moment, feeling a flicker of relief. She didn't have to face this alone. "I'm not sure," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I need to find him. I need to know where Robert is." The man studied her for a moment, his gaze serious. "I can help you with that," he said. Clara's heart skipped a beat. Was this it? Was he finally offering the help she needed? "How?" she asked, her voice full of hope and desperation. The man opened the door and stepped out, walking toward her. "I know where he is," he said quietly. "But you have to understand, what you're about to walk into, it's not something you're prepared for. It's dangerous." Clara felt a chill run down her spine. She had been warned about the danger before, but hearing it again, from someone who seemed to know more than he was letting on, made her stomach tighten with fear. "I don't care," she said firmly, her voice shaking but resolute. "I need to know the truth. I have to face whatever comes next." The man nodded slowly, his expression hardening. "All right," he said, "but you need to listen to me carefully. Once we go down this road, there's no turning back. You'll learn things about Robert that you may not be ready for. Are you sure you want to do this?" Clara didn't hesitate. "Yes," she said, her voice steady. "I need to know." The man gave her a long, searching look before nodding again. "Then follow me," he said, turning back toward his car. Clara climbed into the passenger seat, her heart racing as the car started moving. The streets blurred past as they drove further out of town, the familiar turning into something foreign, something she didn't understand. They didn't speak during the ride, the silence thick with unspoken words. Clara's mind was spinning with questions, and she could feel the weight of everything pressing in on her. What would she find when they reached Robert? Was she ready to hear the truth about him? About the life he had been hiding from her? The car eventually slowed to a stop in front of a large, secluded building at the edge of a dense forest. Clara's breath caught in her throat. This place, it didn't look like anything she had imagined. It was a stark contrast to the life she had shared with Robert, cold, dark, and mysterious. The man turned to her. "This is where it all ends," he said quietly. "Are you ready?" Clara swallowed hard, her pulse quickening. This was it. She had no idea what awaited her inside, but she knew she couldn't back down now. She nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm ready." The man opened the door and led her toward the entrance, the weight of the moment pressing heavily on Clara's chest. She was about to walk into the unknown, to confront Robert and everything he had kept hidden from her. Her heart pounded in her chest as they approached the door. This was the moment of truth, and no matter what she found, she knew she had to face it head-on. As Clara stepped out of the car and followed the man toward the large building, her heart raced with anticipation and fear. The cold air seemed to cut through her, but the nervous energy inside her body was far more intense than the chill in the night. She wasn't sure what she was walking into, but she knew it was something that would change everything, either the truth she had been searching for or the beginning of a deeper betrayal. The building loomed in front of her, dark and foreboding, surrounded by thick trees that seemed to swallow the light. The man who had brought her here opened the heavy door without a word, and Clara hesitated for a moment before following him inside. The interior of the building was stark and uninviting. The dim lighting barely illuminated the cold concrete walls, and the air felt damp, as though the place hadn't been used in years. It was nothing like the luxurious home she had once visited with Robert. No polished marble floors or pristine glass windows. This was a place of secrets, and Clara was about to discover them. The man led her down a narrow hallway, the sound of their footsteps echoing in the empty space. Clara could feel her breath quickening, her mind racing with the possibilities of what she might uncover. Could Robert really be involved in something like this? Could the man she loved have been hiding a dark side from her? As they reached the end of the hall, the man stopped in front of a door, his hand resting on the knob. He turned to Clara, his face serious. "What you're about to hear will change everything. Are you sure you're ready for this?" Clara nodded, swallowing hard. "I have to know," she said, her voice trembling but determined. The man opened the door slowly, revealing a dimly lit room. Inside, there was a desk with several monitors, a few chairs, and a large file cabinet. The walls were covered in maps, charts, and photos that seemed to be pinned up with no real order. Clara's eyes immediately went to the man sitting at the desk. He looked up as they entered, his face unreadable, but there was something cold about the way he looked at Clara. "This is Victor," the man who had brought Clara here said. "He's the one who can explain everything about Robert." Clara felt a chill run down her spine. "Explain everything about Robert?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What do you mean?" Victor didn't respond immediately. Instead, he motioned for Clara to sit in one of the chairs across from his desk. She sat down, trying to steady her breathing, but her hands were trembling. "Your husband," Victor said finally, his voice low and steady, "isn't who you think he is." Clara's heart skipped a beat. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice cracking. Victor leaned forward, his eyes locking onto hers. "Robert has been working with some very dangerous people who don't care about you, your baby, or anything else," he said. "He's been involved in illegal dealings, using his position to cover up his tracks. He's not just a businessman, he's a player in a much bigger game, and you were never supposed to find out." Clara felt the room spin around her. Her mind couldn't process what she was hearing. Robert? The man she married? He was involved in criminal activities? Why didn't he tell me? Clara's voice broke as she asked the question. Why didn't he tell me the truth? Victor sighed, sitting back in his chair. "He thought he was protecting you," he said quietly. "He didn't want you to get caught up in it. But now, it's too late. He's in too deep, and there's no turning back." Clara's mind was reeling. She had always known Robert had his secrets, but she had never imagined something like this. She thought they had a solid marriage, a life built on trust and love. But now, it was all unraveling before her eyes. "Where is he now?" Clara asked, her voice growing more desperate. "I need to see him. I need to understand why he left me." Victor looked at her, his expression unreadable. "You can't see him right now," he said. "Robert has gone into hiding. He's trying to protect himself from the people he's been working with. He made a lot of enemies, and now they're coming after him. But he won't stay hidden forever. When he comes back, you'll get the answers you want. But be careful, Clara. There are people who will do anything to keep the truth from getting out." Clara stood up abruptly, her head spinning. "I don't understand," she whispered. "I don't understand any of this." "It's a lot to take in," Victor said, standing as well. "But you have to be strong. The truth isn't easy, and it might not make sense right away. But it will, and when it does, you'll have to decide what you want to do with it." Clara walked to the door, her mind in a whirlwind. She didn't know what to do next, but she knew she had to face the reality of what her life had become. She had to find Robert, confront him, and find out if there was any part of him left that was still the man she had fallen in love with. She opened the door, feeling the weight of everything pressed down on her. There was no going back now, only forward. She didn't know what would happen next, but she was ready to face it head on. Clara stepped out of the dimly lit building, her heart heavy with the weight of the revelations she had just learned. Robert, the man she had loved, had become a stranger to her in the span of a few hours. Everything she thought she knew about him was falling apart, and yet the pieces of the puzzle were still scattered, too many questions left unanswered. She walked down the quiet street, the cold night air brushing against her face, but it did little to numb the rush of emotions she was experiencing. The man who had led her here, Victor, had given her the cold, hard truth about Robert's involvement in dangerous dealings, things that went far beyond any business deal or personal betrayal she could have ever imagined. Clara's mind was still racing, trying to process everything. How had Robert gotten mixed up in something like this? What had happened to the man she had married? The man who had promised to love and protect her? Why had he left her behind when she was pregnant with their child? Her body ached with confusion, anger, and fear, but there was a small flicker of determination growing within her. She couldn't let this define her, not while she still had a chance to get answers. She had to find Robert. Clara's thoughts were interrupted when her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, hoping it might be Robert, some message explaining himself. But it wasn't him. The message was from a blocked number, a simple line of text that made her heart skip a beat. Asterisk. "I know where he is." Asterisk. Her fingers trembled as she read the message again, then quickly glanced around. Who could have sent this? How did they know about her search for Robert? Her heart pounded in her chest as she thought about the possibilities. Could it be someone Robert trusted? Someone involved in his dark world of secrets? Or was it a trap? She didn't know, but she couldn't ignore it. Clara had come this far, and she couldn't stop now. She dialed the number back, holding her breath as the phone rang. The line clicked, and a voice answered on the other end. "Clara?" The voice was unfamiliar, but it sounded almost kind, reassuring. "Yes. Who is this?" Clara asked, her voice a mixture of hope and suspicion. "I'm someone who knows where your husband is," the voice said. "But you need to be careful. Robert has made some very powerful enemies, and if you go looking for him now, you could be walking right into danger." Clara's breath hitched. "Why are you telling me this? How do you know where he is?" "I'm telling you because I think you deserve to know the truth," the voice said. "Robert may be hiding from these people, but they know you're looking for him. They're watching you, Clara, and they'll do anything to keep him hidden." Clara felt a chill run down her spine. This wasn't just about finding Robert anymore. This was about her safety, her future, and the life of her unborn child. "What do I do?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "You need to meet me," the voice said. "I can help you find Robert, but only if you're willing to trust me. There's no time to waste." Clara stood still in the street, her mind spinning. She didn't know who this person was, but she couldn't turn back now. She had to find Robert. She had to know what happened to him, why he had left her in the first place, and if there was a chance to save him from whatever mess he had gotten himself into, she would take it. "Where do we meet?" Clara asked, her voice steady despite the uncertainty swirling in her chest. "I'll send you the address," the voice replied. "Be there in an hour, and don't tell anyone. Trust no one." The line went dead, and Clara was left standing there in the darkness, staring at her phone. She had no idea what was waiting for her, but she knew she couldn't hesitate anymore. She had already come too far. It wasn't just about getting answers, it was about taking control of her life, her future, and the future of the child growing inside her. The streets were quiet as Clara walked back to her car, her mind filled with thoughts of the message and what she was about to do. She didn't know if she could trust the mysterious person on the other end of the line, but she didn't have many choices left. She couldn't just wait for Robert to return. She had to take matters into her own hands. As she drove through the empty streets, her grip tight on the steering wheel, Clara made a silent vow. She would find Robert no matter the cost. She would get the truth, and she would be strong enough to handle whatever it was. The night ahead was full of uncertainty, But Clara knew one thing for sure: she was no longer going to let fear control her. She was going to take back control of her life, and nothing would stand in her way. Clara arrived at the address the mysterious voice had given her, her heart pounding in her chest. The place was an old, dilapidated warehouse on the outskirts of town, tucked away behind a maze of narrow streets. She parked her car a distance away, her mind racing with a mix of excitement and fear. The phone call had promised answers, but now that she was here, she wasn't so sure. Who was this person, and why were they willing to help her find Robert? Clara knew that everything she had learned in the past few days had led her to this moment. She couldn't turn back now. She had come too far to stop, and she had no other choice but to trust the unknown. She stepped out of the car, her legs shaky but determined. The night air was cold, and the wind cut through her jacket as she made her way toward the warehouse. Her footsteps echoed in the empty street, the only sound in the silence of the night. When she reached the door, she hesitated for a moment before pushing it open. The inside was dimly lit, filled with shadows that made it hard to see. A figure stood near the far wall, their back to her. Clara's heart skipped a beat as she wondered if this was the person she had been speaking to on the phone. The figure turned slowly, and Clara felt her breath catch in her throat. It was Robert. He looked different, his face was tired, worn, and there was something about him that seemed distant, as though he had changed in ways she couldn't quite understand. Clara took a step forward, her voice barely a whisper. "Robert?" He didn't answer immediately. He just stood there, staring at her, his expression unreadable. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them was deafening, and Clara's heart ached with the need to understand. Finally, Robert spoke, his voice low and strained. "Clara, you shouldn't have come here." His words hit her like a punch to the gut. "What do you mean? Why did you leave me? Why did you leave me alone at that gas station?" Clara's voice trembled with emotion. "I don't understand. I thought I knew you." Robert's eyes softened for a moment, but then he turned away, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "I never wanted you to be involved in any of this," he said, his voice thick with regret. "I never wanted you to find out. I thought I was protecting you, but I see now that it was a mistake. I should have told you everything." Clara felt a surge of anger. "You think you were protecting me? You left me, pregnant and alone, with no explanation. How could you do that to me?" Robert's face tightened, and he looked down, as if unable to meet her gaze. "I didn't want you to get caught in the mess I created," he said, his voice breaking. "I never wanted this life for you. But it's too late now. There are people out there who will stop at nothing to get what they want. And I'm the one who brought you into this." Clara felt a wave of disbelief wash over her. "What do you mean? What have you done, Robert?" He looked back at her, his eyes filled with sorrow. "I've made some terrible choices," he admitted. "I got involved with the wrong people. I thought I could control it, but I was wrong, and now it's too late." Clara shook her head in confusion. "You're not making any sense. What did you get involved in?" Robert sighed deeply, then walked over to a table in the corner of the room. He picked up a folder and handed it to Clara. "This is everything," he said quietly. "The truth about everything I've been involved in. It's not just business, Clara. It's criminal. And it's not just about me. It's about you now, too." Clara took the folder from his hands, her fingers trembling. She opened it, and her eyes scanned the documents inside. They were filled with names, dates, and a trail of transactions, business dealings that went far beyond anything she could have imagined. As she read, the full weight of what Robert had been involved in began to sink in. "You've been working with dangerous people," Clara whispered, her voice barely audible. Robert nodded. "I tried to get out, but it's not that simple. I've made enemies, and now they're after both of us." Clara closed the folder, her hands shaking. "Why didn't you trust me? Why didn't you tell me?" Robert's expression softened, and he stepped closer to her. "I didn't want to drag you into this. I thought if I kept you away from it you'd be safe. But I was wrong. I can't protect you from this anymore, Clara." The pain in his voice was unmistakable, and Clara could see the toll this had taken on him. He had been hiding so much, trying to protect her, but in doing so, he had only pushed her further away. Clara's mind was racing. The man she thought she knew, the man she had married, was not the person she had imagined. But despite everything, she could still see the man she had fallen in love with, the man who had made a mistake and was now desperately trying to fix it. She looked at him, her heart torn between anger and love. "What now?" she asked, her voice breaking. Robert looked at her, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and regret. "I don't know," he said quietly, "but I'll do whatever it takes to make things right, for you and the baby. I promise." Clara took a deep breath, her mind still reeling from the truth. The road ahead was uncertain, and she didn't know where it would lead. But one thing was clear: she wasn't alone anymore. Together, they would face whatever came next.